Connor's here. Duke, North Carolina preview, the rematch in Chapel Hill. Carolina, 6 straight wins in a row. Connor, you didn't get to hear it earlier in this podcast, but I was telling Ben, this is the most impressive 6-game win streak I've ever seen in college basketball.
Are you being serious? I feel like you're being a little facetious there.
No, I'm dead serious.
How so?
Connor, we can go through it right now.
I've got it pulled up. Their last 6 games, they've dominated these teams. But Carter, let me give you a little inside basketball here. The ACC is horrible. That's all I have to say. The ACC is awful this year.
Okay, we can go through it. I did it with Ben, but we can do it again right here for people on YouTube.
Let's do it.
You look at the 6-game win streak. It starts off at Syracuse. I mean, that is one of the most hostile environments in college basketball. It doesn't get more intense, especially now. In that football stadium, no empty seats. Syracuse, a great program, historic program, win by 6 on the road up there. And then you play against a team in NC State at home, beat them by 24. That's a Final Four team from last year. Kevin Keats won this is the ACC tournament champ right here. Went to the Final Four last year.
Heated rival. That's a big game, Carter.
Exactly. And then you play Virginia, a Tony Bennett coached Virginia team, beat them by 15, and you scored 81 points against a Tony Bennett coached Virginia team. I mean, that's one of the best defenses in the country. And then you go to Florida State. We know what it means to be in the ACC. ACC fans know it's tough to beat Leonard Hamilton, especially on the road in Tallahassee. You do it by 11. I mean, the amount of length and size and talent they have on that Florida State team, that's so impressive. And then you get Miami, Jim Larinaga. We know how good of a coach he is. You win by 19 against Miami. That's impressive stuff, man.
They were in the Final Four not that long ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. They're in the Final Four. And then at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, another notorious slip-up spot for a lot of the big dogs in the ACC. You win by 32 points there in Blacksburg, Virginia. Mike Young is one heck of a coach and has so many resources coming into that program. I mean, that's one of the top NIL schools in the country for basketball at this moment. In my opinion, this is the most impressive 6-game win streak I've ever seen in college basketball.
I have no notes. There's no reason why this team won't make another Final Four. I mean, this is 2022 all over again. I've always had faith in Hubert Davis. Nobody should ever be clamoring for him to be fired.
Being serious now, don't you dare lie to me, Connor. You and everybody at GTT Bath Nation knows they're all they don't want to say it out loud, but they're all feeling 22 vibes right now.
You know the comparisons are going to run hot and heavy this week. It's going to be, the 2022 team, they closed the regular season plus the ACC tournament on an 8-2 run. They made the magical run to the national championship into Coach K's career. The comparisons will be made because this team this year is heating up at the right time. It's not the same. I mean, do you want to go pull Brady Manick out of Turkey or, wherever he's playing, Poland? I don't know where Brady Manick is right now. Is he on the team this year? No. Yes, this team is heating up and clicking at the right time, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I'm really trying to keep myself in check. But when they shoot 55% from 3, that kind of gets me a little riled up, Carter.
I know how bad all of you North Carolina fans want to believe it. And let's be honest. Let's say they pull off the upset against Duke, which would be insane in my opinion.
Yep.
We'll preview the game, break it down. It's tough to see a path for Carolina besides what we'll talk about here in a minute. But if they go out and beat Duke, and I think they should be firmly on the right side of the bubble if you can go in and beat Duke. But what that will do, the hype train that will create, that will start for Carolina fans, they're going to still be like an 11 seed. Even if they beat Duke, they're still going to Dayton. I don't think there's a world, unless they win the ACC tournament, they don't end up playing in Dayton if they're making this tournament.
I'll be honest, Carter. I'll be the first to admit, if the Tar Heels somehow pull off the upset and beat Duke on Saturday, I'm first in line on the hype train. That will be the true test, because this whole 6-game stretch where they've been dominant, they've won their last 5 games by double digits now. They've averaged almost 91 points a game on this 6-game streak. It's not null. It doesn't mean nothing. But until we see this team against an opponent like Duke, I'm not willing to go that far. But if they pull off the upset, if they do beat the Blue Devils on Saturday, I'm not going to be able to help myself, because that's a true litmus test.
No, and especially because that's just how good this Duke team is. It's not a,
it's not. They're insane.
And I'm not trying to be, biased Duke fan, whatever. Like, it just is what it is. They are the best team in this country right now, and they're head and shoulders above everybody else, in my opinion, right now. It's them and Auburn, and they beat Auburn head to head. So I don't care what Auburn fans have to say. Exactly, but there's a letdown spot. I get that, but I still think Duke is a more talented team than them.
But there's been plenty of letdown spots for Duke that we thought were letdown spots, and they've just continued to steamroll every single opponent they play. It doesn't matter who they play.
And that's my problem, is these teams in the ACC right now, like Wake Forest, like SMU, like North Carolina, who are on the bubble, and they go, okay, but if we beat Duke, we're in. We have that Duke game coming up. The issue is Duke is one of the best teams, is the best team in the country, and their size, their length, their NBA talent, their shooting, there's not – the only hole you can pinpoint in this Duke team is Cooper Flag ISO heavy sometimes can be their worst offense, but that's when everything else is falling apart, and that usually doesn't happen. And I just don't see how Carolina can match up against this Duke team on Saturday.
I agree with you. And the one thing in Carolina's favor to touch on real quick is that desperation where it's like, okay, beat Duke, you're in the tournament. You're fighting for your tournament lives. Yes, there's a nice 6-game win streak, but not a single one of those wins is a quality win. Not a single one. So you've done well so far, but it's still that desperation mode of we need this win to get in the tournament. And the problem with that is this isn't a Duke team with a lot of holes, like you just said, because even the Paolo year, the Zion year, there was always like certain weaknesses to point to within the team dynamic as a whole with Duke. And it's like, oh, exploit that, you can beat them. The team this year for Duke is as close to unbeatable as I've seen. And I mean that sincerely. I don't need to reiterate it, but not a lot of holes in this team. Not a lot of holes at all. So as a Carolina fan, you got to be a little worried because they're not the susceptible Duke teams we've seen in the past.
And you look at this matchup right here, you go, we saw it in the last one. And look, I agree this is a different Carolina team at this point. I think they're playing their best basketball right now. There's no doubt about that. And the key for Carolina is, I think we touched on it in the last matchup where, dude, Carolina's got to shoot 45, 50% from three, somehow, some way get Cooper Flag into foul trouble, and they just got to push the pace and play just ridiculously fast basketball because I don't see another way. This Carolina team is built to play high tempo, fast paced offense, shoot a lot of threes, even though they don't have a ton of elite shooters. But that's how they're designed to play when you're that small. And when you're going up against a team like Duke, that is their only chance at beating them. Only chance.
But that's the point I want to push back on is, well, I'll ask this first. How much do you take away from the first matchup? Because in my eyes, this is an almost completely different Carolina rotation. You look at the first matchup, Withers played 12 minutes. He was a non-factor. Drake Powell only played 20 minutes. He didn't get much of his points until garbage time. They started Seth freaking Trimble at the 4 and guarded Cooper Flag. This rotation, this dynamic is completely different from that. So I feel like there's not too much you can take away from the Carolina side, right?
Yes and no. Yes, it's the overwhelming size that those guards had to deal with. That's what I'm really watching for. It's not even as much the rim protection with Malawach and Malik Brown, who I think might play on Saturday, from what I'm being told.
He loves coming back against Carolina. Yeah, it's the Super Bowl. Yeah.
But when a guy like RJ Davis, who's 6 foot, being generous.
On a good day, yeah.
On a good day. Elliot Cadeau, 5'10".
No, he's a little taller. I give him
5'11".
I give him 6'1", 6'2". Come on.
6'5", for sure. Okay, let's do that. But those two guys, I mean, when they're, and Ian Jackson as well, like, they're going against dudes who are 6'6", 6'7", 6'5", 6'6". Like, they are so much more taller and more athletic than them. And we saw how much that the guards just had trouble getting by. And then the second they get by, then you're going into Kaman Malawach or Cooper Flag or Malik Brown. It's just a tough matchup, and I know this Carolina team's playing a lot better. The rotations are different. Withers has been playing super well as of recent. I just don't know how much that matters against this Duke team.
I'll give Carolina more of a fighting chance on the defensive end because of the new lineup they've employed. So for anybody who hasn't watched a lot of Carolina, for a lot of the year, they were starting 4 guards. And we touched on it on this show. I've been talking about it on the Carolina podcast, Big Hitters Only, that I do, where it's
Shout out, go subscribe.
Shout out to Big Hitters Only. But you can't start 4 guards. It's your 4 best players. I get it, but it just wasn't working, especially against a team like Duke. And now the last 6-7 games, the lineup is now 2 true guards in Cadeau and RJ Davis, two true athletic wings that can switch everything on defense, in Drake Powell and Jalen Withers, who's been hitting shots, and then a center, Van Allen Lubin, who's undersized, but now with those two 6'7", 6'9" wings beside him, it's not as glaring of an issue as it was in the first matchup. So I feel like on the defensive end, Carolina has more of a chance to kind of not stop Duke, but at least hope to contain some of their possessions. On the offensive end, I think we'll see a lot of the same struggles, and they're going to have to hit 14, 15, 16 threes. I think that is the same from the first game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair as well, because I'm assuming they'll put Powell on flag or Withers on flag.
I bet they start Withers on him because Withers is a solid 6'9", even pushing 6'10", and he's got some girth on him, so I feel like that's where he'll start. Don't be shocked if he gets 2 early fouls.
That's and that's exactly what I was going to pinpoint to right there. Him, or if like Lubin gets switched onto flag. I know Withers is a solid defender. And people are Carolina fans are probably going to see this YouTube video and whatnot. And they're going to be like, oh, he's just so biased towards this Duke team. Look, man, you watched the first matchup. You've watched Duke this year. It's just a different team. And I just don't see weaknesses with this team. We talked about it with Ben earlier on in this podcast. I just think that, I mean, like, this is a Duke team where I would be genuinely disappointed if they didn't make the Final Four. Like, it would be an extremely disappointing season if they're not playing in San Antonio. I think once you get to the Final Four, all bets are off kind of deal, and because the tournament can be a crapshoot. But that's how good this Duke team is. They're a 10.5-point favorite in this game. I mean, I just don't know. Even with Withers playing in Carolina defensively, you can't hide Elliot Cadeau in this game. You can't hide RJ Davis in this game.
Well, that was my next point, is if you've watched Carolina over the last few games, Hubert Davis has had Elliot Cadeau on a shorter leash. Cadeau hasn't hit the 30-minute mark since February 10th against Clemson. He only played 24 last night. He's been in the mid to low 20s. It's because of that new starting lineup where RJ Davis is a proven ball handler. The years with Caleb Love, RJ Davis was really the primary ball handler when they had the most success, and then Caleb Love was playing off ball. So they've turned a lot of lineups, especially in the late game situations, to, okay, RJ Davis, you're bringing the ball up. We're going to put in Seth Trimble, who can play more defense, who can rebound better. We're going to put in Ian Jackson, who's a much better scorer and shooter than Cadeau. So on Saturday against Duke, don't be shocked if Cadeau only plays 20 minutes if he doesn't have it going. Because with this new lineup combination, he's not really needed as much. Which he had 12 assists last night. He played fine, but the most, I think, efficient lineup was RJ Davis at the 1 with Trimble or Ian Jackson at the 2.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And also, how do you feel about Cade Tyson getting minutes?
Well, Carter, it's funny you bring up Cade Tyson. I didn't get a chance to bring this up last night. 81 points scored this season for Cade Tyson, okay? He is getting paid $600,000. So he is making $7,407 per point scored so far this year. Shout out Cade Tyson.
That's a good deal for Carolina donors.
I think so too. I think you love that if you're donors. No, but I think it's a credit to him because he's only getting spot minutes. He's played 7 minutes last night. He played 4, then 15 against Florida State. He got some run, but he hasn't been in double-digit minutes really at all. But he's actually been serviceable in those limited spurts. Like, he hasn't been a fish out of water. He's hit a couple shots. I don't think he plays more than 3 minutes against Duke, though.
And we'll see with the foul difference, and we'll see if, we get that classic Chapel Hill whistle, as they say,
Or is Cade Tyson a candidate to come in and just hit 3 threes at the end of the first half? Because that's when he usually comes in, is to close the first half.
That's the hope. That's the hope if you're a Carolina fan.
I mean, you're praying for that. Cade Tyson comes in and a little Cormac Ryan energy gets channeled into him.
You know what my other biggest problem is in this game? And I know, once again, Carolina's playing their best ball. Not 100% the same team as before. Carolina's only good win this year is UCLA. Any other good team they've played, just crap the bed.
I guess. Dayton's on the bubble, right? I don't know.
They're like when the Bears are 3-10 and they're in the hunt graphic.
Yeah. I mean, Carolina has lost 12 quad one games. It's something ridiculous like that. It's in the double digits.
Yeah, you look at, the close, probably their best one was when they lost by 1 to Wake, but Wake isn't anything to write home about.
We've seen Wake implode once again. Yeah.
I'll take that back. Florida was, I thought I was most impressed with Carolina this season.
They really could have won that game.
And that would have been the difference. If they had that Florida win, neutral site, they would be in the tournament.
We wouldn't be sitting here talking about the bubble. Exactly.
And Ben and I touched on this as well, Connor, but as a Duke fan, I'm going to still say this. I want to see Carolina play on Tuesday or Wednesday in the play-in in Dayton.
I mean, that would be fun for viewership. I don't know if I would love that as a fan, but for everybody else, sure.
Yeah, it would be awesome. I don't want to watch Oklahoma. I don't want to watch a Mountain West school. We saw that last year. I don't want to see Virginia, but look, we've done this a billion times, but Carolina's going to get the nod if it's anywhere close to a tie for the resume.
Well, they have to impress the commissioner.
It was the chairman of the committee. Yeah, I mean, it's
they have
tough
to do a lot to impress that guy. He's hard bargain.
You know, Duke is just getting the worst region. You know, they're going to make sure Duke's going to have
right there.
Duke is going to have St. John's, Alabama. Who's another hot 4 seed right now that's going into this tournament? That's going to be Duke's region. There, you know that's what Bubba Cunningham's going to do. I'm looking at. They're going to have like Texas A&M in that region too. They're going to make sure Duke has the hardest, or Arizona with Caleb Love, but I'm not worried about that Arizona team.
No, I'm not either. Last point I'll make about Carolina, and I think this somewhat applies to Duke, maybe Duke teams of the past. Consistency in college basketball, knowing what you're going to get out of your 8 to 9 man rotation, I think is an underrated luxury. I think people take it for granted because Carolina and Hubert Davis were grasping at straws to start this season. It was like, okay, let's start 4 guards, or hey, Ty Claude, you want to play 10 minutes? And it was just grasping at straws. But now he's got that 8 to 9 man rotation ironed out, and he kind of knows what he's getting from each of these guys. I think that's an underrated luxury that's really contributed to this turnaround. And for Duke, I feel like you feel that as well, where Duke's rotation, for the most part, is ironed out. They know exactly what they're getting from all their guys. And, sorry, Caleb Foster, but they know who they're rolling into the game with.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Duke this season, they haven't lost, other than the Clemson game. Shout out the wet floor at Little John Coliseum. You got to get better mop people down there in Clemson. But outside of that game, and Cooper Flagg had the flu. Not an excuses pod. I'm not trying to sound like Coach K right now, but Cooper Flagg did have the flu, and there was a wet spot on the floor that.
Did he get a shot in his arm before that game or anything?
Should have. Whatever Patrick Mahomes takes before Super Bowls prior to this year, he should have been taken. But outside of that, since Auburn, that's when Duke made the switch of Caleb Foster on the bench, Sion James starting. Duke hasn't lost outside of the Clemson game. And honestly, outside of a little diciness in NC State, Clemson, and a little diciness in the Wake Forest game, hasn't been close. I mean, not even.
No.
Duke's only, I think, forgive me if I'm wrong here, I'm pretty sure Duke's only game outside of Clemson and Wake Forest, those are the 2 games in the ACC. Every other game has been won by double digits.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. They haven't won by less than 20 since Virginia. And that was an 18-point win. So, yeah, I think you're right on the money there. I don't know. This Carolina team, they're going to have to play damn near perfect to compete because Duke's going to show up. That's the thing with this Duke team is when one guy doesn't have it going, they have enough options and they have a good enough defense. Defense travels. They will be able to score points, even if Cooper Flagg does have an off first half.
Yeah, and if Cooper Flagg has an off first half, okay, Isaiah Evans, come off the bench, shoot some threes. Okay, Con Knipple, come in, take your mismatch right now. Yeah, your Carolina fans are going to hate Isaiah Evans on Saturday.
The hand over the face. Yeah, not a fan of that. I'm going to be clutching my pearls from the top row.
The wine and cheese club's going to be like, what is that boy doing?
Who they got playing down there in Durham?
Oh my
Coach
goodness.
K would have never.
Oh, I just don't like college basketball no more. I mean, you just got these guys now in college basketball. They're just show offs.
And you can't watch the NBA either. There's too much load managing.
Oh, NBA! Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. I'm back in the NFL, but I mean, about a decade ago with the Kaepernick stuff. I mean, I wasn't watching.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan. I definitely wasn't talking about it.
And I know, it's nice Carolina has the Jordan stuff because I wouldn't wear that Nike stuff.
It's too woke.
And the other thing I wanted to mention with this game too is I don't think it's the end of the world if Carolina loses. I think the thing for Carolina, don't lose by 20 plus. Most teams do to Duke, but that's just if it's a 10-point game, whatever. It's not the end of the world. Your bubble's not busted because I want to ask you this. What would be better? Would it be a 3-game stretch in the ACC tournament where you beat, let's say, Cal, Clemson, Louisville? Or would one win against Duke be better? Obviously, take the rivalry out of it, just for bubble's sake.
You win against Duke and you're in. So I think that is the number one thing they should strive for. Don't you think? I feel like a win against Duke, who is hands down the number one team in the country now after Auburn's loss, a win against Duke puts you in no matter what happens in the ACC tournament.
I don't necessarily know that with the bid Steelers and everything else that's going on. Because I think adding 2 legit neutral site quad 1 wins to your resume might equal, if not be
outweighs?
Better.
Really?
It might. But the issue with that is, okay, is the committee going to care about ACC tournament games after Friday?
Yeah, and to go off that point, if you're Carolina, I think the easier path, the more likely path is winning 3 games in the ACC tournament than beating Duke.
And that's
because
maybe
we've seen
more
Carolina
my point.
beat up on these teams. Yeah.
Because, I mean, that Duke win is that upper echelon win. I mean, it would be the best win in college basketball, essentially. And you're probably right. They probably are getting in as long as they don't slip up in Charlotte next week. But I just think Carolina needs to add a little more juice and make that resume look a little bit nicer. And I think those 2 wins would do it. But back to my previous point, even if, they lose to Duke, it's not over, because I think Carolina could potentially go out and beat a Clemson or beat a Louisville if they get hot in the ACC tournament in Charlotte. And like we've said time and time again, they are going to get the nod if it's tied on the bubble with someone.
We had David Allen on the show last night, and he made a good point that was, look, it would be great to win for Carolina, but don't let what happens on Saturday ruin the progress they've made over the last 6 games. Because, yes, it's been inferior opponents, but this might have just been exactly what they needed. Hey, go beat up on a 9-13 NC State team, or a 500 Syracuse team, or a subpar Virginia Tech team. Go beat up on them. Find your shooting stroke. RJ Davis's shot looks so much more confident now, and maybe that's what they needed. So if they go out and lose to Duke by double digits on Saturday, that sucks, but do not let it, take away what you've done the last 6 games. As a Carolina fan, I'm not expecting a win. I am just expecting Carolina to be competitive against Duke. If this is a game with 4 or 5 minutes left in the game, I think that's a win. It's a moral victory. And I don't want to give out moral victories, but I think that is a moral victory. And when you look at the circumstances.
Yeah, I think it is too. And once again, this rivalry. I mean, we remember 2020. That game, I think Duke was probably a double-digit favorite in that game. Cole Anthony and those guys, not arguably, they should have won that game if not for 2 ridiculous plays.
It was awful. Awful, Karter.
But that's what I'm saying. Anything can happen in this rivalry. I do want that pointed out, but it's just tough to see when you break this game down of how Carolina's really going to be able to score the ball in this game, like we talked about. And I think that's a great point by what that guy said was, don't give up hope. If Carolina loses this game, don't give up hope for what can happen in Charlotte, especially to the players and to the fans, where it is not over, and we've seen anything can happen once the calendar turns March. If Carolina somehow gets into Dayton, and you look at the bracketology right now from Joe Lunardi, let's say they get into Dayton, they win their first game against like a San Diego State. All right, then you go play a 6 seed. You're looking at a team like Marquette. Marquette's been on a downward spiral recently. UCLA, Carolina beat that team already this season. They probably would get that
version
matchup
of themselves.
Exactly, and they could easily beat this St. Mary's team, and you can just all of a sudden talk yourself into a run where, okay, all right, maybe we can F around and make a second weekend. There is that hope there. Now, do I think it's going to happen? No, I think Carolina gets spanked on Saturday, and then I think they blow it against Clemson in the second game of the ACC tournament, because I think Clemson's size is just too much for them to handle.
I think you're spot on, and a lot of the fan base is, the average fan's not looking at the schedule saying, I'm not going to get excited because it's State and Virginia Tech. The average fan's like, Carolina's winning, and they're winning by a lot of points, and they're making a lot of threes, and it's fun to watch.
And that's the other part, is it's how they're winning, and that is very important that when we talk about these games, is this is a different Carolina team, not just because they're blowing out teams, but it's how they're doing it and the confidence they're playing with, and like you said, getting their shooting stroke back.
And they won a 15-1 run to end the half against Virginia Tech last night.
Yeah,
15-1 run. Yeah, it's always been the reverse. This season, it's always been, oh my God, Carolina let another team back into it to close the half, or they gave up a huge run. Now they're down 15 at halftime. To finally be on the other side of that, to be diving for loose balls, getting offensive rebounds, having huge blocks, just showing effort like that, it's something we didn't see from this team the first 2 months of the year, honestly, with all those losses. And You know what, though? Going back to the moral victory point, I don't like doing that in a Carolina Duke rivalry, but this year specifically, because these teams are so clearly on two different levels where Duke is the best team in the country and Carolina's on the bubble once again, I feel like if you go in there and compete and it's at least a game with the under 4 timeout, that's a good thing because Duke is the best team in the country. So that means you can compete. So I don't know. It'll be a big litmus test because Carolina's opponents the last 6 games have obviously been subpar, but you're right. The way they've been winning, it does inspire a little bit of hope in me.
Yeah, talking about those last 6 games, hopefully people made it to the end of this part of the podcast and they realized I was, it was satire. I wasn't being serious.
No, it was great. It was a good bit. It was I sniffed it out right away. I was like,
yeah,
okay.
Of course. I love it. I love it. But yeah, game prediction Saturday. Give me a score prediction and MVP for this game.
Score prediction, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I really do. I think Carolina's figured things out with some shooting. I think they're going to hit more threes. I think Duke wins 91-81. I think it's respectable. I think Carolina fouls a couple times at the end, and it's kind of close throughout the game, but Duke never really lets Carolina back into it. So I'll go 91-81. MVP, I'm going to give Con Knippel. I feel like it's going to be a big Con game.
I like it. What's if Carolina wins, who's the MVP?
Drake Powell.
Oh,
if Carolina wins, I think that's because Drake Powell hits 3 or 4 threes from the corner, has a few huge rebounds, maybe a couple blocks, maybe guards Cooper Flag for a lot of the game when Withers gets some fouls. I think Drake Powell taking his game to the next level in this matchup now with a surefire starting role. If Carolina wants to win, he has to have a huge game. Also, don't be shocked if Ian Jackson comes out and drops like 30. I think one of the 2 freshmen would be my MVP if Carolina somehow wins.
I think that's fair. I think Ian Jackson and RJ Davis might have to combine for probably about 50 points in this game for them to win.
I think you're gonna see a lot of Ian Jackson just because of the outside shooting he brings, and if Duke's defense is stellar at the worst, like they're really good on defense. So if you're Ian Jackson, you come in and stretch the floor. He was nailing threes against Virginia Tech last night. I think you see a lot of him on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. Score prediction for Saturday. I'm going to go with Duke 93, Carolina 77. I think Duke handles it. I honestly think it's pretty similar to the last time they played, but I think it's more competitive for a little bit longer. And then the second half, Duke just pulls away and Carolina the threes aren't going to fall for 40 minutes against that kind of defense. And I think that's where it goes down because, the Dean Dome's going to be electric on Saturday. And, I talked about this with Ben earlier. I talked about this with Ben earlier.
Students lower bowl.
Alabama Auburn probably should have been the game day game, but as a Duke fan and you're a Carolina fan, suck it. This is the Duke Carolina rivalry.
You know what? Both these teams could be a combined 7-45, and you know who's going to be that 6:00 Eastern time slot on ESPN? It's going to be Carolina and Duke. So suck it, SEC. It doesn't mean that much more, does it?
Oh, that was great. That's getting clipped.
I don't need Auburn and Alabama fans coming for me. Football season's over. I've had enough of the Alabama fans.
MVP in this game, cop-out answer. It's Cooper Flag. He's going to go bananas. I think we're going to see a Cooper Flag triple-double game. I think he gets it done with the assists a lot. Yeah. I think.
I'll tell you this.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Finish your point.
Oh, I was just going to say I think Isaiah Evans also has a big game.
I could definitely see that. I will say, if Cade Tyson comes in and hits 3 threes, I might have to go streak around the neighborhood.
It's like when a guy like Leaky Black starts off a Final Four matchup against Duke with a banked shot going in. That is the 4 horsemen coming in if Cade Tyson comes in and makes 3 threes.
That'll be like the Mount Rushmore of like Leaky Black, Cormac Ryan, Cade Tyson, and I don't know. I'm sure Nate Britt burned Duke a couple times. Maybe that can be the Mount Rushmore.
I'm sure Stillman White had a nice showing.
Bobby Frazier probably had a few good games.
Dexter Strickland, there we go.
Don't be shocked if Carolina starts hot with the energy. They hit a few early threes. I think Carolina. Would you be shocked if Carolina's winning at halftime? Because I feel like Duke pulls away at the end no matter what. But would you be that surprised?
No, because we saw like a team like, I don't know. NC State was a game like Duke just clearly didn't care about. I feel like in these top games where Duke is, it's not a letdown spot and they're going in with these big games, I don't think Duke lets down. I'd be kind of shocked, to be honest.
Last thing, does Caleb Foster transfer? Is he done?
Oh, he's donezo.
Because I saw he didn't even play the other night.
No, he is donezo. He's already shopping his stock around. He might already have a pre-agreement with another team, and he's already promised that team that he won't play the rest of the season.
That's what I thought, because it was blowout garbage time. He was sitting on the bench dressed out, but he didn't play.
It's fine. He's just not good enough to play at Duke. He's not better. He doesn't make people on the court around him better. And on top of that, he's just not a point guard. So that's the issue there. And then last thing, National Player of the Year. Are you a Broom or are you a Flag guy?
Cooper Flag. I don't think it's even close.
Thank you.
What he's done for this Duke team and the load he carries on offense night to night and what he's asked to do, I don't think it's even close. And that's why Cooper Flag is minus 400 on DraftKings right now. There's a reason.
Is he?
I think so. After the Janai Broom game last night and that loss, I think Cooper Flag is minus 500.
I think he deserves it too. And also,
he does. I'm not too much of a hater, Carter. I will talk ball from an unbiased perspective. He deserves it.
Janai Broom goes down for a couple games. Auburn's just fine. And apparently the almighty SEC. Maybe.
You better stop.
Yeah.
You better stop. They're going to get on us.
The other thing about the National Player of the Year thing, and then we'll get out of here. Cooper Flag's the best player on the court every single game he's played in this year, and every single night he's the best player for Duke every single night. You can't say that about Janai Broom. Chad Baker-Mazara,
noticeable.
Miles Kelly, Tahad Pettiford, they can all be the best players on a given night. There has been one game this year where I've thought, you know what, Con Knipple was better than Cooper Flag tonight.
And there's never a 3 to 4 minute stretch where you're like, oh, Cooper Flag's on the court. Oh, there he is. He's
not pulling the Gordon
almost
Hayward
every possession. Right, exactly. Cooper Flag. You feel him on the court. So I'm with you. I think Cooper Flag deserves it.
Yeah, I love it. Anyhow, all right, that does it from us. Make sure to follow at Connor_Spare, at Karter B8. And if you are a Carolina fan, check out the Big Hitters Only show. That'll be in the episode description below. Go subscribe to that. I'm sure you guys are going to be doing instant reaction after the Duke-Carolina game.
Yes. I don't know if I'll specifically be on, but we will have a show out after the Duke game.
We'll go check that out. Make sure to follow at CarterCast on everything. Download SeatGeek. Use code CarterCast. $20 off your first purchase. A lot of fun stuff coming up here in the next couple weeks. I'll be doing some live reactions during conference tournament week on CarterCast YouTube and on the Twitter. Yeah, I'm going live. Not just,
love it.
Not just when I say we're live. We'll do it legitimately. So anyhow, make sure to follow at CarterCast on everything, and we will see you guys for a conference tournament preview on Sunday. Bye.